Part 95. The Expedition of Zath al-Rika. The Ghatafan were a tribe in northern Arabia comprised of Bedouins that would primarily raid caravans as their main form of sustenance. They wanted to raid Muslim caravans, and the Prophet led a group of 700 companions as a show of strength and self-determination. The Muslims camped outside their land in visual distance for a week or two, but the Ghatafan did not engage, and the Muslims returned, successful in their goal. As they journeyed back home, the Muslims found an area to rest, as was custom during the scorching midday heat. The Prophet took a siesta under the shade of a tree when a lone Bedouin from the Ghatafan by the name of Gawrath sneaked upon the Prophet with the intention to assassinate him. As the companions all slept, Gawrath took the Prophet's sword, unsheathed it, and waved it in the face of the Prophet, who then woke up. Gawrath sneered.
"Are you scared of me?"
The Prophet flatly responded, "No, why would I be scared of you?" Gawrath, taken aback, responded,
"Are you not scared of me? Who will protect you from me?"
The Prophet responded, "Allah." Gawrath then began to tremble and dropped the sword. The Prophet instantly picked it up and stood up, saying, "And who will protect you from me?" Gawrath then pleaded,
"Be the better of the two."
The Prophet asked, "Do you testify that there is no God but Allah, and that I am his messenger?" Gawrath replied honestly,
"I testify and promise that I will never fight you again."
The Prophet then forgave Gawrath and let him go. When Gawrath reached Ghatafan, he said,
"I have come from the best of mankind."
Another notable incident en route home from Ghatafan is detailed in the hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah. Imam al-Nawawi states, "The hadith of Jabir is replete with numerous benefits." Jabir narrated that he was struggling behind everyone else, as his camel was the oldest and weakest. He was also depressed, as his father had died in the Battle of Uhud, leaving behind 7 daughters and a massive debt, which Jabir would inherit. He recalled,
"All of my worries were piling on me."
He then heard a voice asking, "Who is that in the back?" It was none other than the Prophet's soothing call. The Prophet asked, "Why do I see you so gloomy?" Jabir explained his situation, and the Prophet asked if he were married, as he was a teenager at the time. He replied in the affirmative, and the Prophet asked if he married a young girl or an older woman. Jabir replied that he married an older widow, and the Prophet said, "Why did you not marry a young girl so that you may play with her and she may play with you, and that you may make her laugh and that she may make you laugh?" Jabir explained that he wanted to marry someone who may help take care of his sisters, rather than be another dependent. The Prophet smiled and responded, "You have done the right thing." Jabir explained that the only possession he had was his decrepit camel. The Prophet instructed him to stop his camel. He then rode his camel and said, "In the name of Allah, Bismillah." Jabir commented that it suddenly became the fastest camel he had ever seen, as it raced past him. The Prophet then asked to buy the camel, and Jabir, in his youthful zeal, declined the request. He thought of his sisters and that he needed the camel to provide for them, so despite rejecting the request of the Messenger of Allah, it was a noble decision. The Prophet persisted, so Jabir offered it as a gift. The Prophet then declined and insisted that it be bought, so Jabir asked for the price. The Prophet proposed a price of 1 dirham, a very small amount, to which Jabir, once again in his teenage zeal, declined. The Prophet then offered 2 dirhams, and Jabir declined, and this continued until they agreed on a fair market price of 40 dirhams. Jabir requested that he ride the camel until they reached Medina, and the Prophet agreed. Jabir raced ahead, eager to return as a newlywed. The Prophet then advised him to stay calm and allow her to prepare herself for him by bathing, combing, and shaving. The next morning, Jabir entered the Prophet's mosque, and the Prophet instructed him to pray 2 units of prayer before discussing business. The Prophet then told Bilal to weigh the money and round it up. He then handed the money to Jabir, and as he began walking away, the Prophet said, "O Jabir, did you think I would cheat you out of your camel? Take the money and keep your camel." The benefits of this narration are innumerable. The Prophet played this extended trick on Jabir solely so that he did not feel like he was being given charity. He teased him and bartered playfully to cheer up a gloomy teenager. As he cheered him up, he continued to teach him about Islam, such as the etiquette of returning home to one's family, the sunnah of praying in the mosque before engaging in worldly affairs, and general marital advice. Moreover, the Prophet was the first to notice that a companion was lagging behind, and he was the first to console him. He spent time personally mentoring a teenager, displaying once again his attention to detail in taking care of his ummah, just as he did as a shepherd with his sheep.